Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Microsoft Dynamics Forecaster Refresher course. Today, Tony Rohr, he's our Forecaster Specialist, is going to be presenting. It's really for people that already have Forecaster and you just need that little reminder of how to do things, the things that you get from year to year. And so I'll turn things over to Tony and let him get started.
Forecaster as a product is our budgeting tool in the Dynamics GP suite. It is a separately installed program, so and John or another one of the Tom or one of the salespeople can help you with licensing too if you don't have it and you're wondering about how you can get it and things like that. But it is a separately installed program with a separate database or databases if you would have different companies, but it is part of the suite of programs, maybe similar to something like Management Reporter, where it's separately installed, but it still works with the Dynamics GP system in total. So I'll talk about some of those touch points, and there's, I guess, some differences in how, for people, if people that are using Forecaster now are using it with the FRX, there are some differences in how it interfaces with FRX versus Management Reporter as well. So just to kind of a basic overview of Forecaster from an end user perspective, if I am a budgeter, so in Forecaster my scenario is I've already set all of the infrastructure up. It's kind of like a spreadsheet look and feel. So if I go in to my data input here, so I'm going to click on data input, and I'm going to click on my input set. So this is for people that already have Forecaster. You're going to have your prior budgets set up here. I'm just going to click on an existing input set to just kind of show you what it looks like. So here's a given input set within Forecaster for a particular department, let's say. So I logged in and I'm in budget for 2007 and I'm in the Eastern Administration and I'm doing the budgeting for those. So I get all of my different account numbers that need to be budgeted for right here, and then I get the numbers going across here as far as the monthly amounts. Within Forecaster, there's several things that you can set up to assist with how the budget numbers are developed. Just like a spreadsheet, someone can just go in and key in numbers. So if I have something like travel, I'm able to just kind of go in there and say, okay, travel is going to be, $1,000 in one month and $2,000 in another month. So you can do something simple like that. I can double click on this. So what may be more useful and what is useful for people that are using Forecaster or are not using Forecaster and want to look at it, one of the benefits is you can easily come in here to any one of your rows, and instead of having people develop the budget where they would just put in, say, travel at the top level, you might want them to put in specific things that the travel is for. Maybe it's a customer conference. That's an annual thing that happens in June. So that's going to be in my June budget. It's going to be $2,500, and I can put that in there, and then I can say, okay, so my other things are I have a Atlanta trip for training or something in here, and that's going to happen in July, and that's going to be another $2,000. So one of the big benefits is instead of just putting in a summary number, I can, and you notice how when I put the line details in, that actually overrode my summary number, because once I have the line details, then that's the controller of my line rather than just the summary number. So, and then you can run reports off of that. So at a top level, the person doing the budget consolidation can see, okay, well here's, if that looks high, if my travel looks too high, then it's easy to see, okay, well maybe we can amend or do something else. So the big thing with the budgeting, I guess, is getting more of those details into the budget, and Forecaster just allows us to be able to do that in a nice way, because if I'm doing that in Excel or something, I would have to create a link from my summary line to my detail lines. I potentially, the solution here is that everything is getting stored in the database, so in the SQL database. Whereas Excel, you're creating links and you just have a file, so there's nothing really kind of stored anywhere. The management of it is more difficult, whereas it's more streamlined in an actual product like Forecaster. So there's more audit capability. All the things that you're doing are tracked from an audit perspective. So there's a history of what was done as you're doing it. So that's helpful as well. You can see that I have on here other lines that are driven by other things. So within the setup of Forecaster, you can use just a summary level. You can budget off of like a prior year. So you can say, okay, I want to just take what I had last year and increase that by 10%. We can use another module here in this particular case. I'm not sure why this one's not showing. I'll have to run into a different one. Employees, so I can have where my salaries are driven off of importing a file of employees and their pay, and that can drive, the benefits can drive all of these numbers automatically. I'll kind of show you that and show you how it's easy to copy that from year over year if you need to do a new one. You can put in capital items, like just easily putting in, here's what the budgeter for administration needs the next year. They need to renovate office space and they need a new telephone system, and that's going to impact my depreciation in those periods. 6 for the office space and 9 for the phone system. That's going to add to my depreciation once I add those. And then you can get into more detail. So depending on if you're more detailed, you can get into things like markets and products for revenue budgeting. So I can get into that in my Eastern administration. If I was selling, motors or labor or whatever, I can say in the East that for motors, I'm going to have the person input this sort of sub-spreadsheet. All of these things will automatically roll up to this, to the multi-row and get your master budget. So these are, you can think of these as sort of like sub-sheets if it was an Excel budget. So to kind of delve into the structure a little bit, or if people are already on Forecaster and you have a budget for 1 year and you want to copy it to a new year, typically you're going to already have kind of your core structure built. So, but just to kind of remind people if they're not familiar with it, how you get to this point here. If I'm building out a budget, my building blocks essentially are build lines and columns. So the lines that show up here, all of this would be user defined. I guess it'd be similar to creating like a FRX or management report or report. It's the same kind of structure where you create a line and then you create a column and then you create a budget based upon that line and that column. So the nice thing here is this particular budget looks a certain way where I have the yellow and the these particular accounts, but you can make that as part of the setup any way that you want that to look. So you can simply go into here, and this is my line format. And this was built out to say, okay, here's all the accounts that are budgeted for in this budget. You can make it as customized as you want, so you can make it so that one department sees their own accounts and another department sees totally different accounts, or you can leverage the same line across all departments. If people should just budget the same across all departments, you can just create one line and do that. So once this line is built, this part of it, for people that are using it or in ongoing, it's kind of more of a one-time thing or an updated. So if you add new GL accounts, you'd want to obviously update this line, but outside of that, year over year or budget over budget, you don't need to recreate your line. You just use that same line the next year. So that's why it's kind of generically named just input line, because I can just continually use that. If I go back into my build columns, so column is going to be the columns that I want to show up in my budget for that year. Now this one does require a change for year over year. So you'll notice that I have columns for 2006 and 2007. So if I go into budget, I have a budget column specifically for 2007 here, and then it shows my periods are the budget. There's like this code B2007-01 through 2007-12. So every year I do have to create a new column, but it's fairly straightforward to create a new column with new periods. Nice thing about Forecaster is you can invoke the wizards to help you build some of these things. So if I'm in if I have my 2013 or 2014 budget, most likely is what you're done, and then we starting to work on 2015 budgets. So within Forecaster, to do a new budget, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under my tools wizards, and I'm going to go into my period wizard, and I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to do 2015 now. So I'm going to have 12 periods in 2015. I'm going to start in period 1. My prefix is going to be budget, but this is also where if you do forecasts, so I have a lot of people that do reforecasting, so they do a quarterly forecast or something like that. So they might enter a B for budget and then an F for forecast, something like that. And you can have as many different budget or forecast versions as you want within any given year. So a lot of people, if you have budget version 1 and then that gets sort of preliminarily approved and you want to create a post version, so I have this initial one and then the board wants us to make some changes, you can easily copy that budget version from one to another one. So it would be the same way. So you would just type in that you want to create new periods. So I could do B, I could do budget version 1. I could do something like budget version 1, budget version 2. I'll just do it B right now. But like I said, you can make multiple versions if you needed to. So then I just walk through this wizard. It's really nice because it's easy to use. You can say, okay, I start in January. I want the description to look like this. So I'm going to say January budget 15. So I can see as I'm building it what that looks like on the label. So January 15 budget. And then I just want an overall total for that. So I just kind of walk through the wizard, and then we'll see if it'll let us create that. Sometimes building things on the live is a little dangerous, but we'll go for it. And so I created periods, and then I would simply need to just go and create a new column for that. So I go in to my columns and do a new column, and I'd say I need a budget 2015 column. I can always use these wizards. So again, the nice part is that I can always just kind of use these wizards to help me build things. And then so now I just say, okay, my new column is going to be my new periods here. So I grab those, and I can do formatting. So again, I'm not going to do a lot of that here, but all of the things like the coloration or the fonts or all those things are real easy to make changes to within Forecaster. And then I have a new budget column here, and then you can see I have budget 2015. It's also easy for people if they want to show more than just the current year's budget columns in the input set. You can do that. Oftentimes people want to see like prior year's budget or current year actuals or something like that. We can load that data into Forecaster. So if you want to load your actuals from GP into Forecaster, we can do that. There's some, you just do an export probably with like a management report or report, and then do some simple imports into Forecaster. I'll talk about that a little more in a little bit, but that's a pretty simple process as well. So then I have my budget 2015 column here, and I'm going to use my same input row. So basically I just go back up into my setup and budgets and input set. So if I have a budget that I'm copying from, so if I have my, we'll kind of skip ahead from 2017. I guess we were out of business for a few years. Now we're back in business, so we better do a better job of budgeting. So I'm going to take my 2007 and copy that. So what I can do here is I can just click and say, okay, I want to copy. I want to create my 2015 budget from my 2007 budget. I'll change my label as well. And then my input column. So the only thing I really need to change is now I need to use a new column. Let's see. Budget 2015. Baseline columns. So this is where if you're budgeting off of the current year's actuals or something like that, you can change your baseline. But otherwise, the lines are the same. I can just use the same lines year over year. If I'm going to use human resources, I'd want to mark that those periods are going to be used for human resources, which just means that I'm going to import or input people in to get my salaries rather than putting in a total. There's a lot of other options in here as far as do you want to use all the different modules within there. You can turn it off. The nice thing about Forecaster, it's self-contained, so if you do use it now or you want to use it in the future, everything is just part of one installation. So it's not like GP where it's more kind of module based, and you might have to make sure you have this module registered or this module installed or those kind of things. When we install the Forecaster, it's all installed and all available from all the modules that show up all the way through the importing. You don't need a separate import tool or anything like that. It's all part of just the regular program. So you can turn stuff off if you decide, hey, I don't want to show, people aren't going to use the revenue, so I'm going to uncheck that. I mean, it's just kind of a cleanup. You can set up security groups in terms of who can see and who can import. So one of the things that you would typically do from year over year is your prior budget, you probably want to make sure that was like in read-only mode or locked, and then your new budget version would be unlocked. So when people go in, they might still be able to access the prior year to see it, but they wouldn't be able to edit that. So that's real easy to just change right in the permissions. There's some more specific things that you can do with locking periods, and then overrides just kind of tells us if I'm doing a specific row for Department A and a separate row for Department B. Overrides is just where those would show up. But typically in a year-over-year scenario, if you're just refreshing it, you're normally just going to copy the budget that you have from one year over into the next year, or if you're copying from a budget into a reforecast, you're normally just going to use the same exact structure and just do a simple copy like this, and then I'm done. So at that point, I would have if I go under data input and I click, now I have a budget 2015 version available, and you can see that that's just a blank version. So then I can key that in. Now if I want to populate that, or if that was a reforecast, there's also some nice tools in here. So if I have my budget 2015 and I wanted to populate that with my budget 2007 for some reason, or if I only just wanted to copy some of the setups, you can use another wizard. So if you go under the Tools Wizards, there is a Copy Plan wizard. So this is what allows you to easily copy information from one budget version to a new budget version. So if I said, well, I want to copy from my budget 2007 version to my 2015 version, I can just click here, copy data from, copy data to. I want to copy all segments and all periods, so you could obviously choose if you only wanted to copy certain departments or something, you could do that. And then it gives you the screen where you can copy data elements and or setup elements. So there are some things in setup that would be particular to a year, like your benefits and things like that. So typically you would, in creating a new version, copy your setup elements, because if you're using the human resources, you're going to probably want to use the same pay types and salary grades that you had used before. You may not want to copy, the hours per month. Benefits you're probably going to want to copy, because even if they change, because you might have an increase in the Social Security maximum, you still probably want the same basic benefits, and you're just going to change the rates on there, something like that. So I would copy that, and then I have overrides. I can copy exchange rates. The system does have the capability to do exchange, multi-currency exchange if you need it. So right now I don't have that set up. And if I didn't want to copy the data from 2007, so I didn't want to copy the actual numbers across, I could uncheck that. But maybe my human resource data, maybe I did want to bring in the human resources data, because my human resources is consistent, fairly close year over year. You don't have to do this. You can import this as well, but just to kind of, for purposes here, I'll click on this just to show what would happen if I bring in just the human resources but don't bring any of the other summary numbers over. And then I just click next. So all of this is kind of easy wizard-driven things. I'm mapping from 2007 to 2015. I say, okay, I want to finish that. It'll go ahead and copy everything over. Looks like it's done. So then if I go back into my data input for budget 2015, let's see. Let's look at data. And then under here, there's a human resource master. So there's a master table of all of the people that were brought across. So again, I copied the people that I had from budget 2007 to budget 2015. So let's see, if we logged into a different department, that department wasn't really showing me anything. So let's say I logged into one of these other departments, like, I don't know, was more than a couple in here, 95, say 95050. I'll log into that one. So if I go back to my data input, and I want to switch, so if I switch to 9550, then I have human resources in there. So then so basically I copied the personnel file from my 2007. I created a new version of 2015 that was blank, and then I said, well, now I wanted my master line, because now once I went in there and updated that, then all the salary lines and the benefit lines are going to get updated from that. So the other thing that you'd want, and like I said, I copied this over, but one of the things that's more likely that you would do is you would possibly just re-import your HR file rather than starting from, the last year and then taking people out and adding them or changing their rates. Normally what we would do is we would have, a file. If people have done this in the past, then they're going to probably have the same structure of file that they had before. There's no import from automatic import, like if you use GP payroll, for example, there's not an automatic import from payroll into the human resources into Forecaster, but there's an easy way to import it. That way it's good for people that aren't using GP payroll or whatever also, because then you can just, if you're using ADP or another system, you can just create an export file, and we have a way to import that. So we go into our tools, import, and human resources, and I would have already created a file. Let's say I don't have a good file, but essentially all you really need to do is create a text file from an Excel file. So you just create an Excel file and then save it as a text file and then map it. So it's just a real simple mapping. You just would have to have for each person, what department are they going into. So you just have the department number, the salary grade that they're going into, their name, their ID, their pay, and the pay within Forecaster can either be hourly or salary. You can do a mixed mode, so you can have some people designated salary and some people hourly. If you have all hourly or all salary, that's fine too. You can map to all these fields as far as their specific pay rates, if they're getting increases, if they're getting bonuses, what state they're in. There's 10 user-defined fields available in Forecaster. Usually we use those for benefit differentiation or benefit, because like you're in Minnesota versus Wisconsin versus Arkansas, you're going to have different unemployment rates, and you may have other certain local taxes or something that might apply. So you might want to track that someone's in Arkansas versus Minnesota, because you're going to create a benefit differential based upon that. So we can create the fields that you would need in your system, or if you need to add anything, you can always update these as needed. So even if you're using the budgeting system currently and you want to add another field, you can go in and change the structure. Again, that would be something that would be probably fairly difficult in GP, but in Forecaster we can change the way that the screens look and the fields that are available in there. But you can import to any of the fields and any of the user-defined fields that you want. So that's probably more. I just did that copy of the human resource as an example, but oftentimes we would just create a blank version and create a new human resource file, map it through here, and then just walk through this wizard, would import it, and then you would wind up with the same result where you would have the personnel loaded by department in here, or you can also look at them within the human resources master, because if you have people allocated across departments, in the department budget, you're only going to see them as like a 0.5 or a 0.25, but if you look at the human resource master, you're going to always see the full allocation. So that way you can tell, okay, I have all these people fully allocated. This person down here, Pilar Ackerman is a 0.25, so they're only allocated as 0.25 across anywhere in that budget. That may be right, because maybe they're only a 0.25 person, or maybe that's a full-time person, but they should have been allocated, their other 0.75 should have been allocated. So you can easily tell that from the human resource master. Did you get, everyone in there and fully allocated across the budget? So that's kind of a nice tool for an administrator. It's easy to set up or change within what people can do. So if I go to my setup security, if you need to update or change people, there's groups in here. So if you're an administrator, you can see the human resource master, but if you're, say, an analyst, and I can update these groups as well. So if I go into the properties of a group, I can say, well, I don't want people to be able to do this function or this function or this function. So you can say, well, someone can modify human resources in their own budget, but they can't modify the human resources master. Or some people, from a budgeter perspective, don't want people to modify human resources at all. They might want them to be able to see it, but not be able to change it. And so you can determine that by just updating, putting people in the correct group, or updating their group right within the security within Forecaster. So that's something that you either need to set up, or if you need to reconfigure that. The other thing with the human resources that I'll just kind of quickly go through is under Setup Budgets, Human Resources. For my budget 2015, I can come in here, and I copied this from the budget 2007, but I may need to go in and update my benefits, because if I click on the benefits, I copied this over, but back when I did it in 2007, my FICA limit was 94,200, but now it's, like 100, whatever, I don't even know what it is now, but it's like 110,000 or something like that. And so I can just update that. So I can easily copy the information from one version to another and then just update it as needed. So then my FICA, so the rates are the same, so those are fine. I just need to update the limit. My medical, so if I'm assigning medical, my medical rates, very well could have gone up. So if you're a assembler in New Jersey, you're getting a fixed amount of $200 a month, that might have gone up to $300 a month. And then the assemblers in California were 187, and now they went up as well. And so that's where we can use those user-defined fields, because if I have the state, the coverage, if you need more things, like there's a lot of times where I'll have people that have 6 or 8 or 10 user-defined fields where it'll say, coverage here is pretty basic, like there's family or single. And you can create however many of these as you want. Some people will put in things like the the percentage that they get for a pension or a 401k or something like that, so that you can put that into the benefits as well. But I can easily copy those, and if I'm using the benefits year over year, all I need to do is come in here, and you'd want to check these rates to make sure that you have the correct benefits for that year. When you save it, it'll prompt you for something like this, where it says, do you wish to run a comp task now? Because obviously I'm updating the benefits from the master. I want to propagate that out to all the people that have those benefits. So if I run that comp task, then it'll just automatically go out there and update that, or I can just say, well, I want to do that later. I mean, you're typically going to probably want to do that. I'm not going to run it right now just because it might take a little bit to run. So that would be kind of At that point, other than updating your reports, so you may also have reports built. I'll just kind of show a couple examples of reports and then show you what you need to do to update the reports. So if I go under Build Reports, I'll go to my Reports worksheet. Build Reports. I'll say, okay, I have an income statement. So I have a budgeted income statement. So Forecaster is not only just a budgeting tool, but it also has a reporting capability, and you can look up things at a detail level or a summary level. You can create graphical reports that have drill down on them very easily. So then if I say, okay, I want to drill into, you can drill into line details and things like that, or I can just double click on another account and see, okay, well that's made up of labor, it's not exempt, and then you can keep drilling, kind of keep drilling down on there. Year over year, it's pretty easy to update your reports. The only thing you really need to do to update your report, you can either just change the column. So if I go to my report worksheet, a report is built up of, again, similar to Management Reporter, a report is built up of a line and a column and possibly calculations. So if you're doing a new budget year, and you want to keep history for the prior years, you can copy and paste this, or you could simply just update the income. So if you had an income statement by department, this is running off of the column for 2006. So if all you want to do is update that to 2015, you can do that. Or you could just take, what I more often do is make a copy. So I'll do a copy, and I'll do a paste insert, and I'll say income department. We'll do F2, and we'll say, well, that's specifically for 2015. So that way, I can just come in here and I can put in my budget for budget 2015 column, and then now I have a report for 2015. So I could have an income statement for 2015 and 2014 if I wanted to keep a history of those. So that's something that you would need to either create a new report or update those reports for each budget version you have. But as soon as I do that, then I can just simply double click and I can run. I don't have very many numbers in there right now, so that's why that's blank. But otherwise, the basic report structure is set up. So that's kind of the beauty of using the Forecaster, is that once you kind of have some of those base things set up, for me to copy and create a new version is very simple. It kind of went through it even with me kind of rambling on about a lot of things. Otherwise, I've actually went through and built my 2015 budget, copied my 2007 budget into my 2015 budget, and have a workable budget for input available. And so that took, like 15 minutes for someone to do that. So if someone's got to do that, it's very efficient to replicate that. When people are doing that, if it's something that you're kind of weighing the options as far as, do I do this in Excel or do I do this in Forecaster, people that do it annually, if you only do it one time, it's still a fair amount of work to send spreadsheets out and then gather them back and make sure that they're all compiled and stuff correctly. Whereas here, all I do is I just give access to, and then one of the things I'll show too in the security, if I go to set up security, all of my users would be set up in security here. And the way that if you already are using the system and you need to change people's access, you just go into their user and you can see that I assign each budgeter which departments they budget for. And so when you do this, this determines which departments they can log into. So when they're going into their data input and they pick budget 2015 and they click on the open, their list will be, you know, I'm an administrator, so I'll have access across the board. But someone that's just a budgeter for their department or a few departments is only going to see their own departments. So if that needs to be built or that needs to be updated, that's just under the security within here in the assignments. So it's easy to change someone, so you could say, okay, well, this person really should be getting that one now, so I want to reassign it. So I can just click and drag that. You can have people assigned in multiple places, so if there's a dual assignment or whatever, you can have someone assigned, two people assigned to the same department. And then there's also the ability to do workflow. So once someone submits their budgets and everything, you can have a workflow activated. So they submit the budget, and you can say, okay, well, now I submit that. Once you submit your budget, it's typically going to lock the budget for the budgeter and then push the budget up the line to their approver, and it'll give the approver an email message that says, okay, now you got to log in and approve it. And if you approve it, then it just continues to be locked, or you could potentially reject it and force the person to, you know, resubmit it or whatever. So all of that is kind of canned if that's something that's available. So sometimes people they're using it, don't have it on, but they decide they want to turn that on. So you can turn on the workflow within the input set if you needed. So again, people that are using Forecaster, if you're not using some of the modules or whatever that we talked about, again, they're all there. So any of the things that we talked about you can use as you need, or if 1 year to the next year you decide you're going to expand and use some more, or use workflow or use revenue, all of that stuff can be set up. And you know, if you have questions on that, we can definitely help you with getting a new budget updated, or give you, you know, more of a refresher course, or if you have some questions about if you want to get started with a solution like this, you know, we can obviously kind of help you out with that sort of thing. That kind of leaves us 10, 15 minutes left. I want to make sure you have questions and kind of give that maybe back to John.